Hello, I'm Sora Luxon, and this is Magic Lesson number 35, Astrology Part 2. I'm going to start today a little bit differently, just by letting you know that I'm going to be showing some advertising logos inside of today's YouTube podcast, inside of the little slideshow that's on the screen. I just want you to be consciously aware of that before it starts to happen. And also keep in mind that even though I've told you that, and you can choose to be consciously aware of it, it's not going to make a great deal of difference to your subconscious. And logos are something you see thousands of times a day anyway. And so this little slideshow isn't going to make that much of a difference in the greater scheme of things, but I did just want to let you know in advance. Now, we've already discussed in part how the majority of what people know for publicly accepting astrology to be is a bunch of nonsense. Like those daily horoscopes that I mentioned, those things you see from time to time in newspapers, it's just pure junk that doesn't mean anything, which is why most people with rational reasoning discount all astrological influence as meaningless. But there is a real astrology that isn't public and that has nothing to do with those horoscope type things, which most of the public will never come into contact with, the authentic or genuine article. Those public things that you see in newspapers, for instance, they're just people making things up, maybe based on some format, but never, or very, very nearly never, based in any authentically initiated form of high magical knowledge. Real astrology from a genuinely informed occult background doesn't actually require belief to be accurate or to work correctly. That is, you don't need to think astrology works in order for astrological information to actually function correctly and accurately every single time when it's comprehended and applied accurately as well. Authentic astrological movements, astrology, it works whether or not you believe in it, so your belief in it doesn't really matter at all. It's really just a matter of whether you know how it works or not, whether you choose to know how it works. Sort of like a book that's been written in a language. So there's a book, it's sitting on a chair. The book is real and valid. You're looking at it. It has pages. Those pages are full of words, real words. That's true whether or not you know how to read the language those words are written in. Those words are very much factually there inside of that book. They're real whether you believe in them or not. It's just a matter of whether or not you know how to read the language that's going to redefine and recreate a whole new level of reality, right? If you can read the language that book is written in. Because if you do know how to read that language, then not only do you know that there are words sitting on that page in front of you that you're looking at, but you also know what those words mean. And so this whole new realm of information becomes accessible to you. Genuine astrology is the same as that book metaphor. It's written, it's there, the information is there. It's just a matter of whether you know how to read it or not. The same can be said of any series of patterns that creates a construct of frequencies within a matrix of specified proportions. Okay, that was very scientific. You can't always see the patterns or understand them when you look at one part of a thing, but one piece of a thing is always correlative to the whole network of a thing, and the information of the larger paradigm is very much within that one smaller unit, and you can read that information from the smaller unit if you know how to correctly assess the data being influenced by seemingly exterior forces, which aren't actually exterior to that smaller piece at all. Okay, that's really confusing for people who don't know anything about engineering. Just suffice it to say that actual astrology is actual and contains accurate information, the way any piece of a puzzle is part of a larger picture. Even if that one puzzle piece doesn't know it's part of a puzzle, because it only knows itself. That doesn't make the bigger unseen puzzle less of a reality, less of an actuality. It just means that that one puzzle piece doesn't know how to accurately interpret the larger design that it is inside of. Even if you are entirely set on all astrology being ridiculous, which is totally fine. Some people, even some very advanced occultists, never take up a very real interest in astrology. Most do, but some don't. So it's totally fine. But you should still know that you should take the time to be aware that practicing occultists do know it and do know how to use it and are using it. And often in ways that you can't opt out of. Astrological symbolism and imagery is everywhere and constantly employed by those with mastery of its forms in order to influence others. I'm not suggesting that I personally use it that way, or that that's the only way it can be used, or that all occultists do that. But many of those magical practitioners with, say, less than entirely informed training quickly pick up on just how powerful astrology is and how even the message of it can generate and focus significant power. Think about the common brand names and logos around you. This is why I mentioned I'm going to show some logos. Most of the successful logos, most of the successful brands have occulted imagery, occulted, that is, hidden astrological information and messaging within them. Or they do if they're successful at what they do, right? If they're a good brand, a good successful merchandised brand with successful marketing. Because all advertising is a passive form of mind control. That's what it is, where a brand is trying to convince you to purchase their product without having to stand inside of a room with you and explain all the very good and relevant and valid reasons you should be buying their product, right? That isn't what marketing does. It doesn't have time for that. It needs to get that message across in another way without ever having the opportunity to have that much more informed conversation with you. Now, that isn't evil, right? To try to convince you of what to do to buy their product, it might be a good product. So that isn't evil. That's their job, or an advertiser's job, or a marketer's job. But trying to convince you is not always subtle, and it's not always a subtle form of influencing another's will. So you have to keep that in mind, that it's not always being done for some baneful purpose, but that trying to convince anyone of anything is a way of influencing another's mind, another's will. That's what it is. That's what convincing is, to influence someone else. The human unconscious absorbs and is conditioned to parameters that it grows and evolves with, right? From the time you're born, learn language, learn images, learn labels applied to those images that are agreed upon with the people around you. And you, like everyone else, then are going to have had occult and therefore also astrological emblems, symbols, sigils, and images and their meanings taught to you and then reinforced inside of messaging. Your subconscious is very aware of that messaging, even if you aren't. Much in the same way that even if you don't believe in horoscopes, you'll still know what a Pisces is or what a Capricorn is, right? Just generally, you have this general knowledge, or that a Leo is a lion. Even if you don't believe in a newspaper's horoscope, you're going to have general information that's been absorbed about what the zodiac is. You'll have some sense of that as having to do with astrology, even if you know nothing about astrology. So that information is within you. And you have so much of it without ever necessarily knowing you do. And it's information that can be used and played upon by other people or exterior forces, even if you don't believe in it. So as someone who's a practitioner of magic or interested in it or in some form of the craft or self-mastery of yourself, just be aware, aside from all of the other technique and information and the great art involved in astrology, right? That astrology, even just pictorially, just symbolically, is being used and is having an effect on you and me and everyone else, the same way all occulted imagery and symbolism does. We're all part of the mass human unconscious, and that unconscious knows things that influence the whole. Look at the Red Bull can, or the Starbucks daemon, the stars of Heineken, Converse shoes, the Macy's Red Star. I mean, Sirius Radio just came out and was darn obvious about their astrological bent, which makes sense, right? It doesn't hurt to respect the dog star when you need your satellites to work and work well in order to be successful at what you do. The logo of the Volvo, the triquetra of the Mercedes-Benz, unifying land, sea, and air, Father, Son, and Spirit, the 3 into 1 of manifestation. Yeah, the Benz has a pretty powerful tool working in its favor. Car companies are almost always occulted or lean zodiac in their marketing, because a company that's soul, for lack of a better word, rests in creation of travel technique is going to do well to pay respect to those endlessly and eternally traveling forces that all human beings are subconsciously aware of beyond itself that are traversing the heavens. Heck, Maserati, right? They took the sacred trident for themselves. That's sigil work of such confidence, it's almost sacrilegious. Which, of course, is why it works so well. The way Virgin Records, that label, that name, that works really well. Because it's almost sacrilegious. Ever wonder why the word virgin comes up as being this very attractive word, right? Well, where does its original meaning come from? What is that word? What does it mean? In just about every language on the planet. Well, if you go back far enough, it's Virgo. Old world occult astrological labeling at its most powerful. Now, whether or not someone knows how much power they're looking into when they choose one of these symbols or titles for possibly other reasons, that's a whole other story. Sometimes they don't. But most of the time, especially if they're claiming otherwise, they do know. They're in the know. And they are absolutely using occulted knowledge, which includes astrological knowledge, to do exactly what they're doing and doing so very, very well. Maserati is not doing poorly. So if nothing else, be aware of the fact and reality of that impact which astrology has on your daily life. It's a very real presence with very real world implications and applications. And you can either know and be aware of them, or you can let them move you as they choose. That choice is yours. As I've said before, logos have power over the mind. The word logo from Latin actually defines the principles governing the cosmos. That's what the word means. You can go look it up. See, that's astrology. And you can take control of that power, of any power that's moving through or around you. You can know it. You can use it as you will, as you intend. Or you can allow it to function on you without employing your own will. That choice is yours. Those have always been the options. Before I go today, I just wanted to say, ever wonder why those junk daily horoscope things are even able to survive and persist in newspapers? And now they're everywhere on the internet, of course, too. But why do they persist? Why are they still around if everyone knows it's just a bad joke and nonsense, right? There are other things that are much funnier or much more entertaining. Why does it remain so popular? Why, if occultists have so much understanding of the real authenticity of astrological power, of genuine energetic rhythms and frequencies, would they even take this risk of allowing this nonsense to go on, right? If they understand, if a real occultic practitioner understands how to use astrological influence, these great tides that are influencing everything, why let all that horoscope newspaper nonsense happen? Or maybe even help it to persist and help it to happen when you're totally aware that people see it as a bad joke and that it undermines the art? Well, because it undermines the art. It discredits where the real power is. Thinking something's a bad joke is a wonderful way to keep most people from ever trying to understand or from looking too closely at what the reality is or what the deeper meanings might be. So handing someone something that's easy to discount is a wonderful way of keeping someone away from ever looking into what might be valid. And also, to be fair, very often, whoever's doing something like that, like writing these horoscope things, they might not have ill intent or any intention. They might just not know any better. Or it might just be their job to have a computer program spit out a daily horoscope. That's just what they get paid to do. And they don't think it's real, so what difference does it make, right? It's not like someone's willfully trying to hurt occultism. Or a mid-level advertising agent just thought a symbol looked cool and would make a cool logo for this company's specific client. That happens a lot. But you can be darn sure that the Alfa Romeo didn't choose a snake eating a man as its sigil by accident. And that's something you need to recognize and be aware of. Until next time.